roll call. Everyone's present tonight. First item's open forum. Anybody wish to speak? Okay, next item, consent agenda.
Motion to approve
With the addition?
with the addition.
Second it.
Motion been made and second to approve this consent agenda with the additions. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed,
Just
same?
one point I had pointed out to Rena that there was a mistake on where Mr. George Bechtold had spoke at the open forum. It states that his dishwasher runs 7 times a day. His dishwasher runs 70 times a day on average. So I had mentioned that she could change that one.
Okay. Next item, board and staff report. Police report. Have a new representative from this. John's gonna make you come when the weather's nice. He's gonna stay home, huh? Okay. Well, I think John just, unless he briefed you, just kind of typically summarizes the calls for the month, I guess, the report.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, he said there were 37.5 hours of contract time. 10 citations were written, 2 for speed, 1 for stop sign, 1 for no proof of insurance, 1 for driving after suspension, 1 for displayed impounded plates, 1 for incorrect number of plates, and there were 3 citations with numerous charges. 1 was for no proof of insurance and speed, 1 for driving after cancellation and no proof of insurance, and 1 for underage consumption and passenger possesses an open bottle. There was also 1 DUI that's not on the list.
Okay.
Calls in Rockville, there were 2 1050s, 4 alarm calls, 1 animal complaint, which was a found dog returned to the owner. A burglary. They broke into a garage door, stole $600 cash, and there are no suspects. 6 door checks were completed. There were 3, appears to be fire complaints. 1, I think, was a garage fire, but I'm not sure, and 2 of them were grass fires or wildland fires. 2 loud music complaints. 1 was at 311 County Road 8, and 1 was at 501 Maple Street. There were 8 medicals. There was a property damage, a complaint that a dog bit a car fender. 3 suspicious activities and 5 suspicious vehicles. I believe those were initiated by deputies. And 62 traffic stops. That's it.
Okay.
Busy month.
Do you have any questions?
For John.
Thank you very much.
I have one question. What's that failure to display correct number of plates? You can have 2 plates on a car, 3, or what is
2,
that?
1 on the front, 1 on the back.
That's what you have to have, just
Yeah.
2.
Correct.
Okay, all right, thank you. Next item, Public Works, approved quote for well number 2 rehab.
We're looking for the approval for the well. This is well 2. Its efficiency has dropped significant, down to 25% efficiency. So we went out for bid on that for someone to treat the well, go down and camera it to see if the well is worth investing the money to bring it back, and if it will come back, how long it's good for, and then whether the well is worth investing the money of a brand new building on top of it. We had gone and gotten an estimate on the building repair previously. I talked to rural water, and they had just given me the idea that, or a heads up, let's check to make sure the well is worth putting an $18,000 building on before we go ahead with a brand new building. So the $3,930 is to investigate the well to see if it's worth our time and our money and a building.
Which well is number 2?
It is across from the hockey rink, I guess would be the best way to explain it.
One closest to the school.
Yeah, there's one more building on that site. It's over by the Lions shed as well.
So you're recommending Werner Well, 3930?
Correct.
Okay.
Is that what I thought I heard you say? Because I'm looking at the back of it. So they will just inspect it first before we would do the rest of the stuff?
Correct. Yep.
So if they did the inspection and determined that it's not, we wouldn't spend 3,000.
It's $3,900 to have the wellhead, the motor removed and have it inspected,
Okay,
and then go from there.
okay.
Right.
All right, I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second that.
Motion been made second.
Yeah, Nick, the quick question I have, of the 5 wells that the city has, 2 of them Pleasant Lake, one and one over on where the water tower is, the 150,000 gallon water tower, and there's 2 of them, but one of them was decommissioned many years ago, is that correct? So this is the other of those 2 that are right there on the corner by the skating rink?
Yes, there's well number 1, which is capped. So it's
Capped,
no
okay.
longer in use. Well number 2 has been shut off because of its inefficiencies. So we're currently running on 1 well, which is number 3
Yeah.
in town, and well 4 and 5 are Pleasant Lake.
Right. So well number 2 in the Duisma, when we were doing that some years ago, and that's probably close to 5 years ago already when we did 3-4 years ago when we did
Like 2 years ago.
3 years ago? Okay, time flies, but it's longer than that. But at that point, we were trying to oscillate, so it deteriorated. We haven't used it for how long?
That I'm not sure of it.
Before your time here?
Yeah, since
Okay.
before October, and I believe well before that.
Okay.
The building was in pretty rough shape
Yeah.
as far as critters getting in there and making it their home. So I would assume quite a while.
It's alarming because I feel fairly connected in this community, and this is the first that I heard that pump hasn't been used the way it was intended with the Duisma when we were talking about oscillating back and forth between the units, and that's the intent. So it irritates me a little bit, but life continues. Okay.
What is the expectations of the blowing of the pipe and blowing the well with air for 6 hours?
To bring any type of loose material or buildup on the screen that's down in the well, to free that up and bring that up so we can get, there's a screen in there that keeps the rocks and debris from coming up. So that's basically to bail that, to bring that up to surface.
All right.
Okay, motion been made second to approve the quote from Werner Well for $3,930. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion passes. Did you have anything else, Nick?
Yeah. Also, we're looking at replacing the standpipe. Some costs and estimates on the standpipe on the original water tower in town. We've got a few prices and estimates on that. I haven't personally seen the crack. I don't know, Don, if you were up there or not.
No, I haven't been up.
Okay. We got a few prices. And we were gonna go out and look for prices to see to determine what we should do with that water tower. $475 an hour to repair the cracks. And again, not knowing what's up there for cracks, we have to rent a lift and go up there. This was previously done, so I looked for some notes. I haven't seen anything. A total repair or replacement is $28,000 for that standpipe, with an additional cost of $16,000 to insulate it, to put that tower back online is what we're looking at. That tower is currently offline. And then the cost of cleaning and inspecting it before filling it again. So, that was just kind of a heads up. We need to probably meet and talk about that to see what decision we want to make and go that route. These are just, again, future costs. Clean and inspect all 3 water towers. It's roughly $1,600 per water tower. We need to replace the sludge/silt valve out in the Brentwood water tower for about $7,000. The valve in there is non-operable. So that's a valve at the base of the tank that any silt or sludge that does end up in the tank, we can drain that. That's doesn't operate currently. Well 4 and 5. Well 4 was currently offline when I got here. That needs a little bit of time and material to get it back online. As far as on it, basically chemical work needs to be done to that well house to get it back online. So I'd been asked earlier in the day to get together a number that we were looking for 2015 for the water, or for the budget. Is that what it?
Where we figure the budget will be ending up at the end of the year. And I'll talk to that when we get to the water.
You have all the stuff Nick just went through,
Yes, I
so
have that.
some of this is on the water system that we're talking about the conservation water rate for, and some of it's not, rate 4 and 5, and that valve that you said's.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, as long as Rena's got, then we'll just tie that in with that discussion later. Okay.
That's all we.
All right, thanks, Nick.
Mr. Mayor, may I just add some general? And Rena, again, there in the, when we did the wellhead protection, that original one that has the erector set, the original one that was here, I believe, built in 1968, I think, if memory serves me right. That one has 50,000 gallons and it was not deemed needed for, it was for fire protection. The additional 1,000 or the 5,000 gallons, it wasn't needed for the volume of water. And we talked about that quite at length when we did that DOISMA. So it was designed so that if we're bringing it back online, that disinfecting it to get it back for potable water is going to be substantially more, I would envision, than merely using it for additional storage for fire protection. So I think it warrants us, that's 150,000 gallons, and we used to have 50. We now have 150,000 gallons in the core city and 100,000 gallons capacity at the Pleasant Lake. So from going from 50 to 150, we certainly didn't increase the city by 3 times. And maybe it wasn't the appropriate size at the time when the second water tower was built in the core city. But let's research that before we spend money to go and bring it back online to disinfect it and all of that. Look back in that wellhead protection, that the health department, rural water, a lot of people that were involved in that.
All right. Next item, planning commission, Bill.
Mayor, council members, we met last night. We welcomed our new commission member, Dave Meyer, and I did look back, I don't know if Dave is here. Anyway, welcomed him to our commission. Second, we talked about the structure definition in the ordinance, and the discussion went quite lengthy. We had examples from Paynesville, Waite Park, Cold Springs, St. Joe. They're all a little bit different on their definitions. We ended up the discussion with recommending our city attorney draft a structure definition that would meet and do all areas of the city of Rockville. So we'll expect a draft next time we meet.
Okay.
Campers. This is a hot issue. We started off, and again, lengthy discussion. We took, had some members of the public were here. It was not a public input, but we allowed them to talk and hear their ideas. And actually, at the end of the night, we came up with a discussion about, well, you know, some cities allow campers for holiday weekends. Some cities allow length of stay of 10 days at one time, not more than 20 days of length. We talked a lot about family gatherings, both inner and outer city, excuse me, here in Rockville. And we thought it was a good idea. So we asked our city attorney to draft a camper ordinance, because we feel that it does need to be mentioned in the city of Rockville ordinances about campers, and draft one that goes along those lines, and that the planning commission would take a look at it and then decide length of time and things like that. It was a very good meeting.
Okay.
Sue, anything?
No, I think, I guess just maybe some indication from the council if that's sort of on the right track. I mean, I think going from sort of an all or none, we looked at, it was the city of Spicer, where they've allowed 20 days in a season, only 10 days at a time, at which time it has to be totally removed, and it can't be just removed and brought back. It has to be removed, because the idea is it's just visiting, but it does allow for that, like holiday weekends, guests, visitors, and that seemed to be some of what we were hearing. It's still, you're not allowed to have an accessory structure, which he said a camper is, without a principal residence. So we can't have somebody just parking a camper and living in it, partly because there's no hookups, et cetera, et cetera.
I think it's a very positive
So it seems like a
move
good,
for the city.
like a good compromise, I guess, to look at.
So I would accept any ideas of, are we going down the right road here? I mean, I hope we are.
This is kind of originating back with the Grand Lake RVs issue out there.
Yeah.
Because what I have talked to a number of residents, and in talking with them, when they have a piece of property that is purchased that is unbuildable, they can't build a place on it, then what can they use that for? If they can't put an RV on it and use that for recreation, then are they just supposed to pay taxes on it?
Although in the case that you're speaking of, when that was done, they were well aware, and it was stated at a council meeting, because I believe I was on the council at the time, that those were non-buildable lots. So they were aware, Rick, when those were purchased, that there was nothing allowed to be on those. So that was, I guess I'd say that was a choice they made to buy it. I guess it was sort of stated at the time that it was to be a buffer. And so that one I think is a little hard to say, well, what can they do with it? Because they were well aware of it when they made the purchase.
Can I just add to that? That was the Clarence Block development of the acreage right behind those lots that are on the lake.
Yeah.
And the idea was for those people to buy the extra lot, the extra acreage, or not acreage, but the footage to store their own equipment on, because they had a principal structure. That's why they're not buildable lots. And they wouldn't, help me out here, is to make their own lots buildable lots by buying that, right? Am I right?
Yep.
Right.
Yes,
So,
to expand their current footprint to make it large enough to accommodate that's what the original intent.
yeah.
But there's only a very few of those that were unbuildable, that were
yeah, I think
half a dozen.
it's, I think we have to keep in mind whatever we do has to apply to everybody, including R1 within the city. It's not just the lakes. This is R1 zoning, so it's wherever it happens, this is what we're gonna allow, whether it's on your, the block in the city or someplace out by the lake. And so I think it's trying to balance those needs and the wishes, especially for like holiday weekends and stuff.
So if an RV is on say if it was on my property, on my driveway and parked and
You can store a RV per our ordinance. You just can't occupy it.
Mm-hmm.
Our current existing ordinance, you're not allowed to occupy it at all, ever, per our current ordinance.
right,
So I think we're trying to come up with something that moderates that.
right. Because I know around the lakes, I know around our
Yep.
lake, 4th of July weekend, I mean, they're all over. I mean, it's just, people come and it's like one time a year.
Yep, and we're trying to, have something so that that's
Right.
becomes not an issue.
I know Bill
And I
just,
think, yeah, you're exactly right, and that's part of what the citizens brought up, and I'm thinking like, wow, that's a good idea. I mean, where are you gonna put 20 people in a 20 by 20 foot cabin? I don't know.
yeah. I know just 2 doors down to the west from you, the RV that came in again, and I mean, every year I've been here, it's like they're all summer long, they park over on the park
Oh, yeah.
grass over there, and looks to me like they're living in it all summer long, I don't know.
No,
Right in their
you're
front yard, I mean,
So
Anyway,
we're-
it was a very nice meeting, very good discussion, and I think it's a very positive note for the city to look at this.
So, what about the person that has camper? Prime example, I think Mr. Phillip back there, he has his fifth wheel there. A lot of times his kids will sleep out in that, or friends over the weekend. Now, is that he's gonna be limited to 10 or 20 days in a year? I mean.
John, I don't know that, that's why we asked for the draft, so we
Okay,
could
because I think,
look at that.
if you have a camper like that, for him, my neighbor too has popped up, that kids have slept there once, but I think you should be, if you're a camper and you bought that, you wanna use it, you know, on weekends when friends come, you should be able to leave it sit there, and if you have to, so if you have to empty it, go empty it, but you should be able to park that camper in your parking driveway or wherever, you know, if you need it to 3 months during the summer, it should be allowable. If you're gonna use it, you know, you can't have a separate parking area, you store your camper in a separate area, and then you pick it
Yeah,
up,
we
bring
even,
it back.
we even talked about that.
You did do, okay, but no, I feel that you should be able, if it's there, you should be able to use it, you know.
Well, I think
Okay.
it's trying to balance, because they do create sort of impervious surface. There's reasons when you go around some lakes that people have to go to an RV park if it's there all summer, because then you have proper disposal facilities and you're not risking something ending up, and now I am talking about the lakes, but I mean, it applies everywhere, stuff ending up potentially where it shouldn't be. So again, I think it's trying to balance all of those things and come up with something that's an in-between where we are right now, which is, it's not allowed, though I recognize there are people who are essentially breaking the ordinance, but.
so if you've got the attorney drafting an ordinance, you must give some pretty specific parameters, otherwise I don't think the attorney would draft something that's.
We used
Spicer,
Spicer's
so they're on Green
draft
Lake,
plan.
and
So what, I mean, you kind of spoke in generality, then you're thinking in a 12-month period, somebody could have an RV that was hooked up to utilities and used a maximum of 20 days in a year?
That's what theirs is stating.
it's not hooked up to utilities.
Yeah, it's not hooked up to utilities, but it's a 10-day period, two 10-day periods no longer than 20 days. And correct me, you guys, if I'm saying this wrong.
Okay.
And then on, I think, kind of holiday weekends.
It's in a 180-day period, so
In
it's summer.
100, so really
So it's
looking
summer.
summer.
So that, the holiday periods would be an addition?
Yep.
No,
No?
no, it says no more than 10 consecutive days and no more than 20 cumulative days in any 180-day period.
I just want the council to know that that's a draft. We can.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I know, when you get, but when you get to attorneys, then they're spending money and they're drafting what you want to do. So if there's ambiguity in what you guys want them to draft, then probably should be better to decide now before we,
That's
if we
correct.
don't want holiday weekends included in the 20-day cumulative, then we can talk about it here and then decide that, you know. So we look like you got
I
an
think
opinion.
we felt comfortable that, at least last night, some of us, that the 20 days, including holidays, because basically you're talking Memorial Weekend, 4th of July, and Labor Day. I mean, so, you know, if you look at somebody being there, you know, even 3 or 4 days, you know, that 20 days more than covers the 3 holidays over the summer,
Yeah.
plus some days. So
There's a lot of
I think we were
people,
comfortable.
a 7-day week
Yep.
times on, so. Would that be something that you would require them to permit or register so that, or is it just kind of, you can do it for 20 days and if nobody
We
complains?
talked about that, but we didn't think the influx of labor related to that was.
Yeah, okay, just wonder if it's just.
I mean, the thing we
honor
talked about,
system,
Jeff,
basically.
was whether the camper, so the idea is that a camper it's temporary, so it can't be parked there well, if it's your camper, you can store a camper, but you can't just use it and then take it off and bring it back on in the same place. I mean,
Yeah.
just so, I think we were trying to regulate it more than
Yeah, of course you could
that way,
store,
then,
somebody could store one there then and just use it for those holidays,
yeah.
and it would never move.
You could store it on your property, not live in it, as long as you have a primary residence in place.
Right.
That was the one issue on Grand Lake that wasn't happening, so
Right.
that's
Okay.
the issue.
Okay, all right. Anybody got anything else
Well,
to add on
I do have one quick one here, and hearing, it doesn't sound council action tonight, so therefore we'll continue the ordinances the way they are until the committee or the planning and zoning advances something properly vetted, public hearing, and then we as a council would make that change at that point.
No, actually, you hold the public hearing.
Or we would, but yeah.
So if you have any strong feelings, I think right now, Chair Becker's looking for that from you.
And it sounds like we're heading in a less restrictive, and I think that's what I hear the most in the past, but it does, one quickly here on the Spicer one, 10 consecutive days and no more than 20 calendar days in any 180-day period rather than 365. That's what they have in theirs.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
because
Oh, I
most
thought I
people
heard-
don't use it over the winter.
Okay.
That's why.
I just noticed.
And so I think we were looking at really 180 days too, because primarily you're looking at,
Summer months.
spring to fall. Yeah.
Okay.
that? All right.
I think 20
Yeah.
days is maybe a low number. Somebody could have somebody every weekend, they could use, it was sitting on their place, use it for their kids or somebody camping. You can do that. What if you wanna do it every other weekend? So you got the holidays, you also got 180 days of 6 months. You can go May, June, July, August, September, October. You got let's say a weekend, MEA break weekend, some of you got kids, you got a bunch of people, you got 2 days, they might sleep in the camper, now I've used up your 20 days already, what are you gonna do? I mean,
Well,
I'm
I just
looking
think a lot of cities don't allow that, and that's because they're not hooked up.
Well, yeah,
And you
but-
have to look at the impact
But
potentially
if my
on,
camper's sitting on my driveway, I have a principal structure there, and I have somebody, my granddaughters wanna sleep in there for 2 days. They're gonna use my house facilities and that, but I've used up my 20 days, they can't sleep in it then.
correct.
Well, that's defeats the purpose of me having my camper, that if I can't use it there for them 2 days when they're here. Now, I'm saying 20 days is an awful low number.
I just think right now we're zero,
Yeah.
okay? So going
I
from
mean,
anywhere from zero is a step in the right direction.
That's right.
I'm not trying to be smart, but
Yeah, I know what you're, but I'm just thinking that the number, you're saying in so many 6 months, there's the 6 months, remember, it's not just from May till Labor Day, you got your other days later on too, that people can use it.
Well,
Just
if you
my
want-
opinion out there.
I mean, using your example, Don, if you want to look at worst case, I guess on a 180 days, 6 months, you have 4 weekends.
Yeah.
You have, worst case, somebody would put a trailer, use it every weekend, 48, so I think you're kind of working between 0 and 48, and they're
Yeah.
at 20,
Well,
so.
Well, I want to make that aware.
48
Yeah.
would lead to abuse, because then you'd have people parking a trailer, using it every weekend, they come up here and use that trailer instead of buy a cabin or,
Yeah.
at the
Just
cabin, so.
another
I
future problem.
I guess I said last night, I think we have to go back to when we first did some of these, the goal, and some of it had to do with when we were working on the shoreland and we're trying to improve the quality of our lakes, which they are improving. And so I think we don't want to do things that take a step backwards, because it's not just one. You could say, so if every single person could use a camper or have it parked there in addition to their home, what's the impact, the density on the lake? And honestly, I know there are a lot of lakes that are probably way stricter than what we are. They're going to require you to go to an RV park and hook up to a sewer system. So we're trying to, come up with something that's in between.
Okay, you have anything else, Bill?
No,
All right,
that's
thank
good.
you. Good.
I have one comment here. I think whatever you pass, right now, using it
Yeah.
overnight is breaking the ordinance. And we know this ordinance is
Right.
being broken all the time, constantly. So whatever you pass, it's gonna be very hard to enforce, no matter what, anyway. We don't have any enforcement to
Well, we can
take
enforce
over
our
that.
ordinances, frankly, if we know somebody's like abusing it. I mean, we can, or we can put something in place that says there's a penalty or a fine if.
Well, in this one, where they state the 180 days, when does the 180 days start and stop? It's not even mentioned.
That fine committee will take
that's a
care of
good-
those
There's holes
details.
in their ordinance, and I
That's a
think.
good
Yeah.
point, but we
Yeah.
could define that, Rick.
Right.
I mean, you
I'm
could say,
just
so no, I
pointing
think,
this
I think
out.
that's a good point. I mean, so maybe you say
Yeah,
April
absolutely.
1st, you know, April 1st to whatever. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Next item, unfinished business.
Mayor, would you care to take Paul Worth?
Oh, sure, sorry.
As
Go ahead,
part of the
Paul.
Park and Rec? Thank
That's
you.
addition. Okay. Go ahead, Paul.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yep.
I'm here for the park board tonight with a request. Would like approval from you because this is the season. But this was initially brought up with the Park Advisory Committee, which I do attend. And Lori Anderson attends. She takes the minutes and I work in with the conversation and then we report back to the park board meeting directly after that meeting, which we're both board members. John and Linda Peck have requested that they would be able to use a portion of their budget, which the board holds, to hire a certified DNR firefighter to do a controlled prairie burn at Eagles Park. Since the cost was over our $500 limit, it's actually $825. It may sound like a lot of money, but that's a low price for one of these outfits to come in and do one of these types of burns. Come with a full-fledged crew. He actually works through Steve's landscape service in St. Joe. He has been DNR certified for years, and he has recently increased his certification up to a fire boss. I think he's been burning about 10 years. He's got good experience. I did run through some very good questions that only a firefighter would know, and he answered them all correctly. So, and I've also worked with him on burns. The city's contracted this person out in the past. Rena knows him, Jeff Evander. He's a private forester and a certified firefighter. I'm the same, but they don't use him as much since I came on board. So, would you approve this type of burn? I'm sure you've got questions. That's what I'm waiting for.
You're requesting funds too?
No, the funds are in the budget. We have it.
But
We just need approval because this amount is over $500 to do it.
Okay.
As far as scheduling goes, we know that the state is red flag right now and trained firefighters know we just have to wait till conditions are correct. It's
Yeah.
possible if it doesn't improve, it won't happen. But
How big a crew does he have?
he has 5 members, including himself. And then I'll be there. We may have a few certified people from Stearns County coming. There will be some smoke watchers for fire jumps. They'll be outside of the burn area, but we'll have those volunteers around. So we'll have, 10, 15 people.
Will he need, somebody from the fire department, like Grassroots or something, standing by or?
Possibly.
Yeah,
If
because
you'd like to do that, that would be very
we need
helpful.
to know, because we have limited personnel in town usually during the day.
I mean, you don't always need one. I mean, we have an acre prairie in our shoreland, and every other year they do a controlled burn on it. And I mean, the fire department's not there. I think if they do, I mean, they know what they're doing.
We're doing the entire park site, plus we're including a half acre on Tim Gross's property. That became a question. And when we worked through the figures of establishing a fire line between his and ours, it's actually more cost effective to burn his into the park. We're saving money. And that's also a trap area that if a fire ever did start and go onto his property or vice versa, it's best to eliminate this into black land so it can green up and then it would be a fire hazard. at least for this year. These burns happen periodically. I'm trying to get them on a 4-year schedule. Actually pretty pushy about it. They'd like one every year, but that's too ideal. There's just not enough fuel or to do it year after year.
He's, when the weather's ready, he'll be able to come, let's say it was maybe burned on Friday, he would be able to, you could do it this Friday.
I'll need a contact number, Don. As you know, these burns they go on a moment's notice.
Yeah, I know county's working on a burn too now, they keep contacting me in regards to something out there they wanna do, but the red flag now the last 2 days. Every day you gotta check.
Right,
When it goes, it's gonna go.
right.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I have oversight of that group, and I sat in on that meeting, and there was three obvious questions that were advanced of the proposal, and one of them, it wasn't quite sure. So is it now 825 for sure, or something like that? And it was 825 or 895, and so that was one of the concerns. And I took a summary and I advanced it to Rena, our administrator, and I believe I CC'd it to you, Paul, the request of the concerns from the city's perspective. One of them would be the total amount, and the other one was insurance for liability purposes. So they have that.
They do have that. As far as the amount went, he had a quote there. I read it, I corrected him.
Yeah,
This
I
says
remember you did.
825.
I remember you
He
did, Paul,
says,
thanks.
For some reason, I got 895 stuck in my head. I'm sorry. No, it actually is.
So there was a written
825.
proposal that you've seen that was 825? Then the
And he also stated he would bring the liability insurance coverage forms as soon as he knows he can go
Sure.
with this
Yep.
from his placement of employment. So they do have that covered.
And the other one was the lack of transparency with Tim and Jody that own that additional property. So I'm assuming that's to the north of the city. And so I talked to Tim Gross after church services Saturday night, and he was not aware of it at that point. But I said the PECs will probably be contacting you to see if that could be included. So as of Saturday night, they were not aware of that they were in it. But the rough draft that this gentleman had did include the property. And Mr. Gross stated that he had no problem to include his burn. So, but I'd like to make sure that they follow up correctly and have the appropriate people ask him.
Well, I'm surprised he wasn't contacted. John Peck was the one to do it. If you didn't hear by Saturday night, I better be calling John
Yeah,
again.
yeah,
Tim, this is something Tim has wanted.
yeah. So those were the three concerns that were brought up. And I think the other thing that, from the fire department, we had some years ago bought drip torches and all of that in the fire department. And I talked to our fire chief, and he thought it would be great to be able to at least piggyback or help along, additional reinforcement. Not being spearheading it, but certainly to a learning curve for some of the new members of the fire department would be great. So I think a co-op effort would be superb.
I agree with you, and I have talked to Rod on two
Okay.
occasions.
Great.
And Don probably knows that. And Rod welcomes the idea
Great.
for these trainings. The fire department has never said no to us, but sometimes it's hard getting an answer back for sure which way. Do you want to do it, or should we wait, or are you going to go with it? We just don't know. So, and you do have good equipment. We could use that also, especially a torch.
Well, if that's the case, that we have an 825 and we know the total amount of area, we have the certification, we have the insurance company that would be covered, so that would also add the city as an additional insured. Is that correct, Rena?
That's correct.
Okay, then we have the city covered, 5 members out there. I think it should be a no-brainer. It's been a number of years, so there's a lot of foliage out there, and it's high time.
4 or 5 years.
4 or 5 years it's been.
All of his crew are certified.
I move that we go ahead with the 825 endeavor and have the fire department co-op that effort, but have this gentleman, Jess,
Jeff Evander.
be this front runner on it, or the
Know him, Don?
primary.
Yeah, I met him the last time.
Okay,
I'll second it. Motion been made second to approve. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
Paul, I got one question for you. Are you gonna start feeding the pocket gophers pretty soon out there?
In the site?
That park, if it looks like nothing but black mounds in there now. I mean, they must love that area there for
Well, I
pocket.
do. Yeah, Linda and I have talked about this, you know, how protective they are.
Yeah.
I gave her some suggestions. I also indicated that those are excellent areas to plant prairie. But she was concerned about some scout groups that they had in disturbing the soil. You don't have to disturb any soil. Use the mounds. She hadn't thought of that at all. I've used those in the past and they work excellent. So we are discussing that.
I thought this was a proposal to roast them, or what do you?
May I add one, as long as Paul is there, quickly as it relates to, there's two signs that were created through the effort of Paul and the Park and Rec for the prairie, we call them retention ponds, but it's the actual rain gardens. And that's going through the process. I believe Nick is probably working on getting the go for one call. And then we'll have some groundbreaking, or not groundbreaking, but picture taking and bringing it to post. And then we'll have some of the dignitaries from the Watershed District staff, along with the appropriate people from the city, the Park and Rec people, and hopefully when the flowers are up and get it. So that's great news. They will be given some accolades out here for that endeavor. So it's working, Paul.
Great.
Next item, unfinished business, member Wellenberg requests for funds at 10 NLC conference in Washington DC. Go ahead, Dwayne, if you wanna.
As I stated several months ago, I had put in a request. I believe it's still here. I again offer tonight, if you care to deliberate that and ask me to step out of the room, I would be more than happy to. But I did take the commitment to become a member of the standing committee of the EENR, which is Energy, Environment, and Natural Resources of the National League of Cities. I ventured out to DC. I had my bride, Diane, along with me, and our youngest son, Nathan, and his lady friend. So we made a bit of a tour guide and also business. Mine was a business. They did the tour guiding portion of it, but I did have a privilege of being there for a couple of the things. But anyways, as it relates to the meeting, it had proper orientation, enormous amount of webinars before that. Did get to actually enjoy the networking it's very intense, a lot to learn. In the end result, some of the positives, we got to meet with both of our congressmen's staff. It happened to be the week when the legislature was not in session, but Senate was. We did meet with both Senator Klobuchar and Senator Franken, and that was on Monday. And lo and behold, before we had left, we found out that the President of the United States had been invited to come and speak. It had been 21 years since there was a seated president that came to the actual gathering, and lo and behold, we went through all of the appropriate process, and we had the president speak to us. There was probably about 750, 800 people in the building or something like that at that point. It was kind of a special highlight for me to be able to perform in that kind of environment. So I learned a lot. I hope that not only city of St. Cloud, or city of Rockville, but surrounding areas and the watershed district. The watershed district opted not to help me with the funding. They felt that that was probably something that should be either done through MOD, because it's a statewide. MOD is the Minnesota Association of Watershed Districts, and we have advanced that request to the state level. And the League of Minnesota Cities has not given funding in the past. Vince, our past county commissioner, very active member on the small cities, might be able to give us some input, but generally you have to be a state delegate to the national before you get funded from the League of Minnesota Cities. So it's generally on our own nickel that we do that. So anyways, I committed to going to the one, not in Salt Lake City in June, but I will be going to the one in Nashville in November. So that's kind of where we're at. And that was a request. Anything to help me out would be appreciated.
Okay. I guess being that we're responsible for managing the taxpayer money, I guess I'm trying to figure out how we could quantify a benefit to citizens, because I think we're subject to being questioned that is there anything, Dwayne, you could speak to concrete that the city would benefit? I mean, I think it's great that you volunteer for this but I'm struggling to, answer somebody came up and questioned, why did you give, Dwayne $300, $500? How does this benefit the city? And so I gotta come up with an answer.
Yeah. And of all of the 7 committees, one is on transportation, one is on foreign, the EENR, which is probably the one that I would be most qualified, otherwise I wouldn't have got appointed by the national president to serve in that capacity. So is there something finite that I could put my finger on today that says this has happened or this conceivably will happen in the city of Rockville? Because me sitting there, I would have a tough time being able to do that. But the years of experience on the National Association of Home Builders on the Environmental Issues Committee, by virtue of being on the Sauk River Watershed District, currently as chair of that committee, and being a city council member, all of those needed to be in order to be able to even be qualified, or something like that. So I will continue the commitment irrelevant if the city of Rockville sees the validity in additional funding or giving me funding. I've made that commitment for this year. It's a yearly event or it's a yearly commitment with 3 years. If they go 1 year, generally they want you to go a full 3 years rather than retrain or some of that. So Ralph, no, I think there's a gentleman from the mayor of Independence, Minnesota is one of the others, and the mayor of Rochester are the other 2 seated members that are on that committee that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Oh.
Anybody else have any questions or?
Never had any specific fund set up for a training or somebody going to a conference like that either, so. It's a good that he got that, he can probably help us on something in the future, but like I say, you can't guarantee this is gonna help us right now, and what if somebody else comes another month for some other endeavor, we're gonna have to do the same thing again too, so I think it's kind of tough. But technically, we don't have a fund that does pay for this kind of stuff. We have a training fund, and when we go to conference, and our fire department fund that do cover special events like that.
Okay. All right.
I thought in February, Rena had said something about there was a fund that had, I think she said somewhere around $60,000 or something that we could.
You have a fund balance that's quite, healthy, that's for sure. 60,000, I said something about?
Yeah, I think it was somewhere on there. I don't remember exactly.
I don't think it's in a budget, but I
Yeah.
think, like I said, there's money in the general fund balance.
I mean, it is developing policies on issues involving air, water quality, energy policy, national wetland policy, solid and hazardous waste management, which does affect everybody, so.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I do think given the lakes and river and stuff that we have in Rockville, I mean, I would assume that there are parts that really would apply or be, relevant to how we think about some of those resources, so.
Mm-hmm. Rena, do we have any policy on how much educational expense or travel expense, in a fiscal year or any particular?
No, it
Counselor.
depends upon your budget, what is originally set in December for the next year, that's been it.
I think Dwayne and Rick went to League of Minnesota Cities, right?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Well,
I'll make a motion to do $300.
I'll second that.
motion been made and second to approve $300. Rena, where would this come from?
Out of the training, and we'll probably do a budget amendment at the end of the year.
Okay.
Or let's make that a budget amendment now.
Okay.
Approving the budget amendment too, because I think we only put $400 into that whole thing.
So I'll
$500.
just add that to my motion
Yep.
with Rick.
Okay.
I mean, I guess I do think it is relevant to, given sort of what we have in the city, I think to think about the policies and the impacts, and I would hope that information he gathers would he'd bring back and influence sort of how we think about some of those resources within the city.
Yeah, speaking of that, I know that when you guys attended this League of Minnesota Cities, we'd kind of established this policy a long time ago that the attendees would bring back summaries, and I don't think we ever got that the last time, at least. I mean, I know Dwayne, you submitted something, but that looked like a regurgitation of the syllabus rather than, you know, points that you thought applied to the city of Rockville, so.
I would add that our training session we just had on April 1st was a very good representation of what had happened at the training that I went to. Because it was training that I went to was for newly elected officials, and they brought all that. And I sent Rena the whole packet that they have available online. You know, giving my version, you know, trying to interpret what they said. I think it's better if you're interested in reading what was there, they have it all available.
But I
In that
think
format.
What Jeff is saying, if there's something in particular, so a session you went to, so, you know, maybe coming back and saying, so on what you heard on, you know, open meeting laws was this, and this is how we might think about it, or whatever it is.
Right.
You know, same with, I mean, it seems to me some of the water policy and wetlands and whatever, I mean, we think about the lakes and resources, and I mean, within the city, how does that impact how we're, you know, thinking about, say, even the camper issue, and, you know, so I think, you know, ways to bring back, I think that's what Jeff is asking, if there's specifics that come out of it that you think we could do better. I agree, you know, trying to interpret all of this stuff, but if there's specific things that really stick out for you that would improve how we're, specifically what we're doing, I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, I guess I was trying to look for a method that,
Right.
you know, by the city spending taxpayer money, sending people that attend, that it could save the entire council from going, and, you know, otherwise, on your argument, you could probably request all the literature and just have it mailed to us, and then we could all read it, rather than attending it. We're, you know, trying to find a cost-effective, time-effective way for all of us and staff to learn what we send two people do or one people do. So that was my, you know, kind of my goal there, so. Anyway, so we have a motion and a second, to spend $300. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. I'll oppose for the reasons I gave.
And I'll abstain.
Motion passes 3-1. Next item is the continuation of the public, or I guess the public hearing is over, but the council discussion of a water conservation rate is being carried forward from the last council meeting. And I think during the last month, we had one other proposal put together. I think Don and Todd worked on that, so I don't, Todd, do you want to talk on it, or just want to let Rena present it? Do you have your own input you want to? Come up to the podium if you would, if you want to.
What I had put together, I had kind of gotten some of the numbers from Marina and Judy about where everything needed to land for the budget and stuff like that. And the current, what I did was on the current base fee is like $19 and some odd cents. What I did so that everybody kind of paid equally type of a thing for water tower repairs, well repairs, you know, general maintenance on the whole system, is I figured a higher base fee. Across the board, you know, per apartment, per house, per, you know, whatever type of thing. And then with doing that, I did do a bracket with, I think you guys have the different breakdowns, I was able to shift some of the cost per 1,000 gallons down from where we're currently at, and on the low end, and the top end is higher than where we're currently at. And it all comes out, I had several different examples that I did. One of our lowest users in the city, that person's overall bill over the course of the year, I think, would go up by like $6.50 for a year. And the difference just in base rate right now, per user, the difference would be about $36 a year. So that person's rate is going up, 1/6 because they have a low water usage.
Okay.
And everything. Another example I had around 4,000 gallons a month and everything. That person's went up mid-20s to around $30, which is still less than just the increase in the base rate increase. So they're paying more on their base rate each month, but because they're using less water, they got a break on that and everything. And then, I had several different examples and broke them all down and everything. What I came up with comes pretty close to like the budget numbers that Rena and Judy had given me. And with Judy's help, we worked some different numbers and stuff. And I just thought people are using less water are still getting a break. And everybody is kind of paying for the general maintenance of the whole system.
Right.
It's kind of what I had
Yeah.
come up with.
Okay,
Could I interject here?
go ahead.
I don't know how you came up with your figures, but in figuring the lowest one that we had on that sheet last month, those figures were incorrect. For 300 gallon usage in 2 months is not $26.18. It's $20.15. So under your plan, she would pay, 26 plus, what do you got? $3 per thousand.
And it was
3
like
times
300.
0.3, that'd be 90 cents, so she'd be paying $26.90, where currently it's
Okay.
$20.15, so she's gonna pay a $6 increase just for that bill.
Okay, see, I was assuming that the numbers on there.
Yeah,
were
these are incorrect.
Okay.
This one that was handed out last month was incorrect. I
Okay.
forgot to talk to staff about that. Yeah, if you figure out 1908 and add the cost $3.55 for 300 gallons, it does not bring that up to $26.18 as it shows here.
Okay.
That's
Thanks for
in,
the correction, Rick. I didn't go through the examples that I had. So
Yeah.
that's-
and I think we just got information yesterday. We've been asking for a long time how much is in the reserves. We want to achieve a $60,000 reserve. We have, from the auditor, we have 33,000 in reserves right now. So we're not trying to get 60,000 for 4 years. Now we're trying to get 27,000.
For over 4 years.
And our current rates, we made revenue versus expenses, we actually made $7,636 on the current rates.
Okay.
So these huge rate increases are not anywhere needed.
Okay, and I was just going off of what information I had, Rick.
Right.
Trying to figure out something that is fair to the small users, and fair across the board type of thing.
But keep in mind, we're also building this, I think what you were using was budget, and we also, so it's not built on last year's actual. We have to look at what we think the expenses are gonna be this year, and I think Nick just outlined earlier some costs that are gonna be repair costs associated with the water fund. So I hear what you're saying, Rick, but I think, we do need to build something in for the reserve, and I think,
With a lot of those repairs and stuff though, how I look at that, yes, they need to get done, but some of those repairs have been sitting there for years too, where, I don't think it's feasible to try and make it all up in 1 year and get all these repairs done that have been sitting there for years.
When I'm not, and I wasn't saying all in one year, but I think part of the, I mean, as I was listening, and I think part of the problem is we need to have some kind of regular schedule of how we're going to do these things, so they don't all have to fall in one year, because, you know, when you just keep pushing them off, there comes a point where, I know our facility director at the college likes to say, eventually the projects pick you. You don't pick the projects, because if you let them go long enough, eventually you absolutely have to do something. And it usually costs more. So, you know, how do we sort of we need to have some plan that,
Oh, yes,
you know, how we're going to take care of it.
I definitely agree with that, you know, I
But
mean.
really appreciate your work on
you
this,
gotta-
by the way.
You gotta have a budget, you
Yep.
gotta plan for it.
Absolutely. But thank you.
Yeah, okay, thanks. So, yeah, before we conclude that, you know, we're gonna try to take care of all the expenses that have accumulated in 1 year. I mean, I think we need to go through, number one, what their proposal projects for annual revenue total. And then look at what the budget expenses have been. And then I think what Nick and Rena and you and Judy spent a lot of time today is, what is Nick recommending we do for repairs this year that exceed the budget? And what is that? And I'm assuming it's gonna exceed the budget. I'm just guessing, but what is that figure gonna do to the 33,000 we have in reserves now? What Todd and Don's proposal was gonna add to the budget, to the reserves, if anything, and see where we're at. Just, and I know they're budgeting and we're, you know, making some assumptions, but I have a feeling, I mean, you threw a lot of numbers. I don't think anybody remembers exactly what they were, but time to go through them now and then see. We could be sitting at less than 33,000 at the end of the year when we get done with what Nick is thinking we should be taken care of.
If I could real quick, not all of those things, you know, they're all very needed, but again, not expecting those all to be done this year.
Okay. Well, okay, let's start out with,
Can I,
what is Todd and Don's proposal over and above the budget? What amount was that looking to put in reserves? It's something less than, because I think at 145,000, we were estimating roughly 15,000. I think I saw a number of 137 or.
130.
34, 630.
Say 135 rounded.
So we're 10,000, so maybe, can we safely assume that 5,000 of their proposal was gonna go to reserves? Ballpark? I mean, does it sound reasonable? Okay,
I had done a summary that, for you.
okay, well, go ahead then.
Is
Go ahead.
circulated or?
Yeah, I just did that today. I'm gonna read it to the whole,
Okay.
Okay,
to
go ahead, read it
everybody.
then.
Just so everybody knows why we're doing what we're doing. State law states that cities serving 1,000+ customers must have demand reduction measures in use by January 1st of 2015 or before, requesting well construction approval from the Department of Health, or before requesting an increase in the permitted volume for a water appropriation permit from the DNR. Now, you remember, we have a potential business wishing to come into the city and they use a large amount of water. So I would say we will be asking for an increase in that permitted volume. So I think it's imperative that you do something. There's like 12 different ways that you can do this. Which one we're choosing is the conservation rates. And you can do, I think, a few, you know, different things of those there. We do have an adopted and updated wellhead protection plan, which is very detailed in what is managed in the plan. We also have a very good working relationship with the DNR. You have asked for the starting point. The auditor gave that to me just yesterday. So it's at $33,000 approximately. I've also provided you with the ending 2014 revenue and expenditure budgets. From that, we learned that revenues exceeded expenditures by $7,636.56. Water sales alone last year amounted to $120,905.78. The goal of the council was to generate $145,000 in revenue for 2015. The proposal presented by Don Simon and Todd Beamer amounts to $134,630, which is $10,000 less than the goal. However, it does exceed the $120,000 in the budget by $14,000. The council agreed to reserve fund of $60,000 within 4 years. Well, we're currently at $33,000. The council also agreed that there would be a 5% reduction in use once the conservation rate takes place. Using the proposed revenue graded by Don and Todd would result in approximately $6,731 loss, or $127,898. This is still $8,000 more than what was paid in 2014. Add $8,000 to the $33,000 and you are at $41,000 in reserves. You also discussed an increase in percentage of 20 to 50% between tiers. Todd and Don's proposal shows increases of 17, 22, and 12% approximately. Mayor, you also asked what I thought we might where we might end up at the end of the year, given all of what on the backside is Nick's, what he was telling you about as far as what he saw as repairs. If I take the March 30th expenditure budget, minus out what we've spent so far just on repairs, so that we ended up with $18,774 minus $2,410 brings you down to $16,363 or $364. Take that times 4. Approximately, these are our everyday expenditures, so that's $65,456. Now, the total budget was $147,405. Take off $42,778, which is the bond payment, brings you down to $104,627. $104,627 minus the $65,456 leaves you with $39,171 to be used for those repairs. And that's more than what the budget was. The budget was $32,190.
So what was the final number, 39?
$39,171 that's left for repairs.
So you're saying we could do about half the repairs,
Yeah.
maybe? Or am I reading this wrong on the back? Are you saying, does this say the estimate, the rough estimate for the major repairs is almost $80,000?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. That's if
That's
we
if you
do.
decide to do
If we
something
did,
with the
right, and
tower,
obviously,
right.
I think we said earlier that it probably needs to go through committee and, Dwayne, to some of your questions to
I'm
look at.
I'm still unclear. 39,171 represents what?
What's left that would probably end up that we could use
For
for
repairs.
repairs.
And end up with a zero reserve balance, or?
Right,
And it was zero?
yep.
Okay, so half of what Nick's proposing brings us to zero.
Yeah.
And so we're effectively using up the 33,000 in reserves.
Oh, I wasn't using that up, no. I'm
That's
sorry,
what I'm
Jeff.
asking.
The 39,171 there I had, that I gave you, that is what's left once you take the total budget minus the bond payment, minus those the 65,000, which is the whole year of expenses that I'm estimating. That just left you with 39,171, of which the budget calls for 32,190 in repairs. So if you stuck to the budget, 32,190, yes, you probably might have a little.
So you'd be adding, so you would be under that adding $7,000 or
Right.
so to the reserve, which if you take the 27,000, we said our goal is to get to 60,000 reserve and we have 33, we have 27 left. That's about 7,000 over 4 years, you're at 28,000. So, but it means we'd have to look at what are we doing on repairs? Do we,
That's your key thing.
yeah, which ones do we do? Can we spread them over a couple of years? I think there'd need to be,
You'd have
yeah,
to look at spending it out
yeah,
on the repairs.
yeah.
And we want to plan is to do this in 4 years to have that. reserve or set them out there, starting.
I still, you know, I don't think I'm a math idiot, but I'm still not following what, you got, what I wanna know is,
Where it would be at the end of the year.
and how it affects the $33,000 reserve we
If-
got currently, if at all.
All right,
And then, and assuming we'll get to this figure before we talk about what part of the 80,000 Nick is, okay?
Right.
Can you take me to that point?
yep, I can. If you were to just spend what we've been spending this first 3 months, and you limit yourself to the 32,190 in repairs, you will
That's in
come
our
up-
budget.
That's in the budget, you will come up with a little extra.
What's that little
Seven.
extra?
From 32,190, take that away from 39,171.
So 7,000.
7,000,
But we haven't done anything with Nick's repairs.
no, well,
So we got the 33 and we got 7, so we got 40. So if we do half of Nick's recommended repairs, we're back to zero at the end of the year with reserves.
Because there is money, there's a repair line in the budget that would cover
yeah.
32,000
Oh,
of
well,
it.
Well, that's it.
What I was asking, what I asked
That's
in,
what it says,
what I
yeah.
asked in my email this morning was for Nick to project expenses over and above what we've already budgeted
Oh, okay,
for. So,
that you- yeah.
so his 80 should be reduced by 32.
Correct,
Okay,
correct,
so
yeah.
40.
So half of it
For-
roughly
yeah.
would not be
Okay.
budgeted.
Well, if I could, I think the 80,000 that we came up with was repairs, were major repairs, but I don't know what was subtracted out as far as normal budget. So I think you're right. I think Susan's right. You know, we've got the 80,000 projected, but if we stay on track with exactly how you explained it.
Those are major, his are major repairs. And what I had given you with this 16,363 is what we're averaging in a 3-month period. If
Yeah.
we stick with that same
Okay.
spending thing, we will spend 65,456.
Okay.
We budget totally 147,405. So
Alright.
yes, you got a $7,000.
If we don't do anything that Nick is recommending, we're still gonna spend, best guess, the 32,000 that you talked about.
No, I don't think so. I think you'll spend less, right? If we don't do any of these requests.
Right. He's talking about, what I'm asking is the repairs that he's given us his estimate, are those over and above what we would have estimated in our 2015 budget and built in to the expenses for that system?
Can I
You're
ask,
saying there's some overlap.
we have 32,000 in the budget. How much of that would we have spent on just regular repairs outside of this list? That's what you're asking.
Yeah.
I mean, we must always have some small,
And this is probably something Nick
Repairs.
can't answer because he wasn't here to build the budget
Right.
last year, so maybe nobody can answer it, I guess, because we don't have the right
It's,
person. But
it's increased steadily over the years. Am I correct, gentlemen?
Well, 2013, it increased by $17,000.
Yes. And we
The
spent,
repairs and
big-
maintenance was $8,000 for a number of years. Before that, it was $4,000. And most of those years, it didn't even spend the $8,000. And the error in the bond payment in the water rate study got shifted from that error into repairs and maintenance.
That's right.
And now repairs and maintenance went up from the 25,000 last year to 32,000 this year. That's part of the things that I've been saying. As a business, when you're looking at your expenses and they were consistent all along and now they're shooting way up because you have more money in there, I wonder why.
It's budgeted, it hasn't been spent, but that's what we're using as a budget and apparently, and at least we have a number of 33,000 that's unrestricted, correct? The
Right.
question that you had was how much is in the reserve that's unrestricted?
Yeah, I got-
And there's some that is restricted though for
Right.
debt load.
Right.
or
I do
debt,
have a
stream.
couple questions here. One, does the public have the copy that you gave us?
no, I just gave it to you. No, I'll
Oh,
certainly
no,
get
when
that
we're
out there.
discussing things here, data practice, open meeting law
we'll go
requires
back
you
there.
to have a copy for the public.
And I didn't get that circulated, so it just handed it out right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Page it down.
And that's been a little bit of a irritation to me coming to council meetings and getting the information when I get here. It happened every month so far I've been on the council. And the other question I got
Rick,
is,
before you, I'll take the blame for that because this is something that I thought was important for the discussion tonight, so I just requested this of Rena today, so I know they had to scramble to put this stuff together, but I think it was important enough that, because I know you guys were pushing for what was in that reserve figure, and I know that looking at Todd and Don's proposal, that we weren't gonna be setting aside 15,000, so I wanted to know, and factoring in some of the repairs and deferred maintenance that Nick has been bringing up, that we were gonna, could likely impact that existing reserve, so that's why I asked them to try to put this together quickly today, so.
and I can understand that, and I have another big question because we're pushing on what the Archon SAC and WAC fees have not been paid. Just in the unpaid WAC fees that they are special assessed, they have $116,741 in arrears of their payments that haven't been paid into the water fund for the SAC fees. So if they're not paying that, who's picking it up?
Whack fees.
The WAC fees.
WAC.
I'm sorry, yes,
Yeah.
WAC fees.
How much did you say?
It's $116,741.
And the county has 116,847. That's pocket change anyway, or some of that, but, and that's only until 2013. That's the certified connections that weren't completed
But that-
as of 2013.
That's outside of this system though, right? I mean, are you saying that they're using funds from, they're expensing something through this downtown water system to make up WAC charges out there?
I would be.
The way I
willing to bet
understand
that
it, there's one water enterprise fund.
Yeah.
That's correct, yep.
So where's the revenue stream of how do we pay since 2000 and way back in '08? Well, it starts off here. The first 2 years, they paid the WAC, and after that, since 2005, there was no completes. Couple years, none. 1 year, they had, in 2010, they had three hookups, none again in 2011. So what we're doing is, at the end of the year, if they haven't done those 10, Rena sends that information to the county then certifies it against the bulk land that's out there. And that would be that outlot B. And that amount this county has is $116,847 worth of we didn't receive payments for all of those WACs for those years.
Doesn't that come into play really? It has to do with the debt service? Because I'm assuming we bonded when we did that.
Right.
And so at some point, I think where it comes into play, if you played it out, is we don't have that money. And so when you get, I guess sort of hypothetically, right? If we just say we never collect it, by the time you get to your last debt payment, you wouldn't actually have money
True.
to pay for it, right?
But aren't
It's
we?
because it's not part of the current operating costs of the fund.
Yeah.
It's not part of
It's coming
our,
from someplace. Does it come out of our general fund reserve to pay that debt load? Or does it come out of the operations and maintenance? Because we put it all into one water enterprise fund. And this one over here, we know that we're paying debt load based on that 1908. That's what it was designed for, not for operations and maintenance. The base fee is set up for the cost of debt retirement. The water usage fee is for the operations and maintenance. So when Mr. Beamer was talking about going up to $26 versus the 1902, the intent of that money, the difference, which is $6.92 times 380 some, that's a big chunk of change. Just on his 72 units, that'll be about $3,000 more that Mr. Beamer would be paying just on base fee this year if it goes up to $26. But we're not looking at individual units, we're looking at the big thing. But that, I think, has been my challenge all along, and that is if the debt payment is supposed to be coming from those WAC fees, and in the developer's agreement, it talks about a maximum of $352,000, I think it is, total, $312,480. So that, I think, is where the question I have is, how is that debt being paid for if it's not coming from the general, not the general, but the water enterprise fund through the operations and maintenance or in the base fee of the 1908? I mean, it's all in the same bushel basket full of money. That's the question I have. That I've
If
been
those
asking.
bonds aren't being paid out of the water fund, then just explain how they're being paid.
Well, I'm guessing the bonds are being paid out of the water fund, but there's other, I mean, that bond, and I guess I don't know, I'm looking at Rena, but I'm assuming when we did the bond, it covered more than just Orcon.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So it's part of it's part of the annual debt payment, and what I was saying is eventually we wouldn't hypothetically have the money to make the payments because at some point you wouldn't have collected enough.
Right.
Because there's more people served by that than that development, correct?
True.
Right?
No, who else is connected?
But
to
the
that?
19, but part of the
Brentwood
19,
Hills, and then there's one or two just on County Road 6.
Yeah, so Brentwood Hills and 2 homes. So,
Now, if you remember, this is the bond that you refinanced last year.
Right, because we had a
You
balloon
extended the
payment.
payments out till 2027. All right, so right now, it's still, it is being paid by the water fund, without a doubt. I understand Member Willenbrain's concern, and that is, and I know it's been talked about at a council meeting before, that if this one does go belly up, that it shouldn't just be the water users that pay for it, it should be the whole city.
yeah.
I know that was your concern, correct?
That's what I shared last month, and that information, when I thanked the council for allowing me to share that. And that, again, I think at this point, it's way too complicated for us to try to solve at a council meeting tonight. So if we truly know that they're not making those water access fees, it probably would be wise to have the mayor select the finance committee to research that along with staff. And then Randy Schreifels at the county or the auditor. Last month you said you didn't want to talk about it until after the auditor, that you corrected me. And I thought it was you or the
Yes.
auditor, but it was your concern. So now that
Yep.
the audit's complete, would it be not wise for us to look at how can we get that money to become liquid again? That's 116, isn't it 116,000 I just shared?
Yeah.
Yeah, 116, almost $117,000. And is there also the other question that I quickly would like to interject, and is there some restricted reserve that's set aside?
Yes.
I thought I seen an email that I caught today,
Yes.
521, is set aside, 521,000 is currently set aside for debt of, refunding of debt, correct? So $521,000 is already stocked away in the reserve specifically for debt payment of any refunding of any of the debt that we have out there right now.
I think that was a requirement. I mean, when because we called the
True, but
what we
when
did with the bond,
Yeah.
it's a requirement, you have to put the
a
money
program or a,
aside.
yeah,
I mean, you don't have it can't be used in any other way.
that is correct.
It
And
will go
it's
to
a
pay
smart that it
debt
is.
service.
That's a smart
Oh,
move.
yeah.
And that's the, but it's complicated, but yet,
It
if
is.
we had a couple of those
Yep.
answers, if we had $116,000, just that one alone, 116,000 cash infusion to bring it back to current, we would be sitting here really great shape or something like that.
We would, except that I think you have to keep in mind that some of that, when we collect SAC and WAC, depending how we collect them, we might do a 20-year bond issue, and let's just say everybody paid their SAC or WAC fee up front. You sit with a pile of money, but it has to pay your debt service over 20 years, right?
But that has to be, then, it has to be designated.
So you
can't
just
use
have
that.
to, but I'm just saying, so it may look like you have a bunch of revenue or money, but eventually, if you used it all in some other way, you would have a
I'm
gap.
not suggesting we should touch it, because
Yeah.
that's like the sacred cow of India. You can't touch that 521,000
Yeah.
that's set aside for
Yeah.
a specific reason. We know that. But anyways, that other issue about
I mean, I
that.
think it's fine, Dwayne, to have the finance committee look at it and see. And again, I
And
don't
it
know
might
either
take
what.
legal, might take legal counsel to look back at that Archon development. As I read that developer's agreement, there's all kinds of clawback provisions that are established in that developer's agreement that should give us, the capabilities of putting the leverage on it to get that land. And the county, ironically enough, has not the driving force in a case like this, because the taxes on that outlot is incidental. I think it's 5,000 something. That's all that's owed on taxes. So the county is not going to be the one that's the driving force to have a sheriff's auction and try to be made whole. So it takes us, the city, to do that. But anyways,
Rena, when we were collecting whack charges, was that coming into this fund as a revenue then?
Yes,
Was, huh?
yep.
Okay.
In fact, we collected 5 last year that got
Do we,
transferred back in.
okay. Do we
We
build
only
it,
sold 2 already this month.
so do we build in the budget a certain number of whack charges for revenue, on the revenue side then?
Yes,
Do we? Okay.
and Rena's an optimist, there's already 5, but I'm the pessimist for a second. There's 5 that didn't happen last year. That's 5 more that we had to certify to the county, and then the county sits there and says, okay, what can we do about it? And the county is not in a position, they only owe a few dollars to the county, if you look at the big dollars there. But I think I'd strongly recommend that the finance committee, irrelevant of where we go with our rates tonight, that we have the mayor give the directive, or the council give a directive to have the finance committee along with staff, and then the county, Randy Schreifels, to pursue that and see what we have, including if it takes some legal counsel guidance.
Okay. So back to where I was being educated here. Where are we at? 33,000 in reserves and 7,000 contribution from Todd and Don's proposal against 80,000 of major unbudgeted 2015 expenses, roughly? Okay.
Yes, but I think we should review what needs to be done, and whether, are they all immediate, or could they be done over 2 years, or?
Well, yeah, no, I'm
period,
just,
but-
I'm trying to move the conversation along to the next step, which would be of the 80,000.
We could do
What
about
do we
half of
want
them,
to try and do?
right? We could do about half. And still keep the 33,000 and add 7,000.
I don't think so. I don't,
not quite half, that's for sure, yeah. Because we've spent 2,000 already of the
Okay,
32,
so not quite half, but
In Nick's comments here, it says these are all rough estimates by contractors, and this is a worst-case scenario.
so.
I
You
understand.
had
big wish
stated that
list.
they don't all need to be done this year, like we're
Right.
saying,
Right.
so.
I think for purposes, I don't think we can make it perfect, and I think it's gonna have to be over a couple years. So I appreciate Don and Todd's work on this, and I would make a motion to accept their proposal. And, again, we revisit this every year, so I think we have to look at how much are we gonna spend in repairs this year, what actually absolutely has to be done. And hopefully it doesn't draw down the reserve we already have, but if it does, then it means we need to address it next year when we relook at this. So,
Increasing every rate class, I did the calculations, every single tier will see an increase, and the lowest tiers, like he was mentioning, the lowest, the one that's conserving the most, she'll go from $20 to $29. That's just ridiculous.
Well, Rick, your proposal, if you would have left something in, at least what we had last year for the base water meter, you were suggesting $5 across the board, so your rate was higher than all these.
No,
Aren't you, you were recommending $5 per thousand across the board, flat?
$5 across the board, yes, because we had adjusted that to $5.25 because staff said $5 didn't make it. I was going off of the 2013 water rate study that showed our cost to produce 1,000 gallons was $4.96.
But if you left a base fee in place, your proposal is higher than all these tiers. The only difference is you took a base fee away and our inability to
Right, well
cover
then,
our base costs.
if you were gonna have the base fee in there, then the rate would be lower in order to break even, because I've sat here for years and listened, and the goal of the water fund was always to break even. Now we're talking about building reserves and everything else, and I'm like, well, wait a minute, where is this all going?
That was a recommendation by Dwayne and passed by the council to
And-
build
and
a
I-
reserve, so.
And I don't think we've
I think
ever
it's
had a
prudent.
disagreement on building the reserve. I think we all agree on it, but if we look at strictly this year alone, the cash flow of revenue that came in versus the expenditures this year, and we did have two major construction projects, and we still had a net gain of, what was it, Raina?
76.36.
76.36. And so if we look at that and we have what I sense from way back when we started last December, there was a recommendation by the finance committee, Randy and Sue
And
and staff worked together and came, and the only reason that didn't fly, I believe, was because we didn't know how much was in the reserve. And I made the motion to table it for a month until we had the reserve. Here we are 4 months, 5 months later, or whatever it is, and we're still not quite there yet, or something like that. But now that we know what we have is reserve funding, and we have the end of the year that we made those $6,000 to $7,000 or something like that. So I don't see where at this stage of the game, a monumental increase on the base fee to go from 1908. Why not leave the base fee where it's at and have a few tiers in there to appease DNR and continue to go forward? Pick up that 116,000 that's laying out there, and we're all gonna be happy. That's my simple version.
Okay.
But there was a
So we have a
motion.
motion on the table. Don?
Why don't you read the rates, on your motion, if the people know what
Okay,
it's gonna be.
so the motion is, it'd be a $26 bi-monthly base fee that covers operations, maintenance, and replacement. The rates would be for 0 to 4,000 gallons, $3 per thousand, 4,001 to 8,000, $3.50, 8,001 to 14,000, $4.25, 14,000 plus $4.75.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, motion been made and second. Any further discussion?
I do. If in the event that we see movement on getting that funding available in the foreseeable future from Archon's property, would we, or if this prevails, when would it become effective? It says here January 2nd, 2015.
Correct. They would see it on their May bills
But it says effective date January 2nd,
of 2015.
2015.
Yep.
So we would go back and,
Yeah, you bill for water that is past, okay? We're always like 2 months behind of what you actually use, but when you finally get billed it, it's how this whole billing system is here.
So if people have gotten a bill for January, February already?
Yeah, they have.
So you'll go back and they'll have a,
No, they haven't been billed for their January water yet.
That comes in May.
This comes in May.
okay, okay,
That far,
Yeah, that's how it works, yeah.
okay, sorry.
So that's what, and that's what we always have had on here.
so if the effective date is today, it would really mean, or if the effective date is of the water that was used in January, the 15th, there's a December reading and then there's a February reading?
No, January.
Was there January?
Yeah.
Well, I did it in November, the day after the big snowstorm, so I did the water meter reading on November 11th, 11th or 12th, so the next one should have been in January and the next one should have been in March.
It's for the water that's used in January.
From January 15th until March 15th?
January 2nd. January 2nd. Yeah.
The water reading would have to be done on January 2nd if that's the case, and it wasn't done on January 2nd. I'm splitting a hair. I've never figured out why we couldn't have, a December 30th. There's always some monster movement of numbers that have to be part of the fiscal year of 2014 and 2013. It's a mess. It's a mess. But, so we know that the first water payment that hasn't been paid yet at this stage of the game. So it's the
When it'll
water that's
show
going to
up
be
in
used
May.
on what particular day?
Yeah. They'll get their next bill in May and will have the increase on it.
Okay. So the payment that we made for water that was November and December, they're going to go back from, let's say,
No.
no? We don't have a definitive way how we come up with the water that started on January 2nd. There was no meter reading on January 2nd. But we're splitting hairs here.
Yeah.
I'll just add my comment that I think this large increase across the board, every single person would see a major increase, and it's just way out of line, way out of line. I mean, right next door, Cold Spring, their base fee per month is $4. Their highest tier is $2.30. I made a comment at the Public Works meeting that we met with Stickney Hills to Paul Hessian, and I said, we were talking about the water rates, and he had made his comments about why they put the tiers and they have a different rate for the industrial users. And I said, well, if we had your rates, we wouldn't even have a problem because your rates are ridiculously low compared to ours.
But how many users? I think it's difficult. How many users do they have on their system? At some point, there's to have the water system, there's a certain amount of fixed costs. I think they have probably more industrial and business users and probably homes. So I think it's difficult to compare. In some ways, we've probably spent similar amounts on having a system, but we haven't gained sort of some of those efficiencies, economies of scale by virtue of our numbers. So
I'd take a shot in the dark, but I'd say the brewery is their hugest user, and I'm sure they're making plenty of money off of the brewery using their water. But I had made the comment to Paul, I said, well, maybe we should just buy our water from you. And he said, well, if we get this next well that's looking very promising, you could maybe just do that.
Okay. Well, motion been made and second. I guess we'll do a roll call vote. Sue, want to start?
Aye.
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 Nay.
Nay.
Motion passes 3-2.
We're gonna hold a public hearing on this? You're just gonna hold this because it's a totally different rate. Totally different than anything we've
You tabled
passed.
action at the last meeting, if you remember. You did table action.
So it's a continuation?
But the public hearing was closed.
It was closed, but you tabled action, so this came back with a different proposal, yes. But it was less than what was proposed at that public hearing.
Less than what was proposed.
Well, if you remember, Susan's top rate was $10.
$10.
Yep.
But changing the base fee that much is quite a drastic change.
Okay. Let's move on. Next item, committee reports. I don't have anything. Tory Trail, did Public Works. Rena, do you have anything?
Public Works?
Where did, you had a report? Oh, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
okay. Everybody in their your booklet should have what was transpired at the last Public Works meeting. I can go over everything, I'm not gonna hit on everything here. One of the key ones I think we did meet with Stickney Hills on a Saturday, representative of Stickney Hills, and Cold Spring, and discussed several items that they had concerns over, we had concerns over what Cold Spring did. And Dave was our engineer was gonna get with Paul and with Stickney and us to come up with some more dignified numbers on there, what has to and how they wanna pre-treat or post-treat their raw sewage that would come out of there. And then the rest of it, he gave us 215 projects we got on here, several were addressed by Nick already in repairs and so forth. The one thing we did a survey on Pleasant Road, and there we had some survey came out, we asked for street improvement. 26 were for and 11 were against. A walking and parking lane, 11 were for and 25 against. Then to add water at the same time, there's 6 were for and 31 against. And the reason that question was put in there was that we redo the road, it's more cost efficient to put the sewer or water lines in under the road at the same time, so in a few years when you need water, you don't have to dig up the road again. There are some recommendations about we can hold off the water main, hold up for 5 years and do the whole thing on the road, if we can save the road that long. Or we can maybe put the road in and allow, and water on the water line, to allow the people X amount of years to connect to it and so forth. And that's one of the options, we're still looking at that, we're gonna keep following this up some more. Then there was a question from Mr. Tamble about a culvert up on Chapel Street. We're gonna do some more investigating on that, now with permitting and so forth, if that's possible to do anything there. There's some of that funding that dear Dwayne said from Sauk River Watershed District in Bowser. And Nick had a question, Hubert Lane, we can look on more, how much snow removal, do we wanna do this next year, or et cetera, in that road, we've had issues for that over years and years. 230th Street, which is eased tremendous as last year, we put up signs informing it that it's a rough road, a lot of holes and dips. Nick and Gina filled a lot of them up with ground or class 5, and that they've gotten better now that the frost and so is going out. And remember several years ago, I think Mr. Herbert was Marriott, it was discussed about repairing that road. It would have been about a $750,000 job because there's so much muck in there. Some people have suggested to make it all gravel, grind it up and make it a gravel road now. That's a potential, but we don't know what happened with the frost heaves in the spring will come on there. So Nick's keep an eye on that. We're also seal coating. Nick's checking all our records and what streets we're gonna do this year to keep the streets that are good up to snuff. Frost heaves, there's several of them. He's also working on that, and we're just keeping an eye on them so we can patch them like we did last year. He's thinking about upgrading our Kubota tractor and more, but he's talking with several different dealers on that. Also looking at a possible salt shed, just checking around what other cities have and what the cost would be. Maybe looking for future development of a public works building. And you heard him discuss about the water tower and well house repairs and so forth. Well, that was discussed at the last public works meeting, so there's, and you can see there's quite a list. It's not that we're just trying to sit here, and I keep getting comments every day on how we're gonna fix the road, so we're looking at that. Nick and Gina are busy. I drive the road, and anybody else has questions, just call myself and the maintenance people, let them know if you have ideas on what can be done.
Can I ask a question on the portion of Grand Lake Road that's Main Prairie or shared with Main Prairie? I mean, and there's, a couple spots on that that are really bad that have broken up over the winter, so do we need another conversation with Main Prairie?
I think that's what it'll take, because if you remember last year, they were going to fix it and bill us, but that didn't happen. They did not fix it, so
So I think we should
it requires.
ask Public Works to have a conversation with them.
That's not on the area that we did the reconstruction on.
No.
It's further, closer to County Road 8.
It is,
Okay.
yeah. And unfortunately, at the time, we couldn't get them to agree to just do the whole thing.
Remember, well,
Yeah.
So we can put that, schedule a public meeting, or public works meeting, have them where we can try and contact before that.
Yep.
But I think Nick will probably schedule another public works meeting in the near future, and we have those numbers, so we can come back to the council on costs for these items, and he'll be able to research a little more prior towards what are we gonna fix on the tower and so forth. Dave, do you have any, did you and Nick communicate anything on for the tower so far, or you just been working on the roads, basically? Okay. And also, I found out that, the county let out the bids for their road project, and supposedly most of the rural areas, hard drives got the road work there, so we'll be trying to contact with them in regards to, we get funding aside for Sauk River Road to fix that stretch up and get a barrier so somebody does not go in the river over the future and possibly culvert. So that's something we'll have to contact, and I think we'll try, maybe with Rena or myself, we'll try and contact the county, being as parkland on each side, if we can get the county board, or from the park, they would have any money to help pay for a little bit of that repair on the road, so. That'll be taking place in the next several months. I have no idea when their road projects will start. But if they grind that road up, it'll probably improve the tonnage on it also by tarring it. Because there's a lot of buses use that road, milk trucks, and farm equipment. Plus, the summer, there's always a lot of horse trailers and vehicles down that road. So the average weekend, there'll be at least every day from 3 to 4 horse campers in that parking lot there that use that. So we gotta keep the road up. So we'll try and see what we can come up with extra funding. And I think Sauk River Water has some money, I've talked to them too, or Stearns County Soil and Water regards to some riprap along the Sauk River side to keep it from eroding. So we're just following up on that when they get their funding together. That's about it on that.
Okay, thanks, Don. Next item, administrators' correspondence.
Excuse me?
Oh.
RTCB?
Yes, under Recorded Trails Construction Board report, there's going to be a action item for this council, and the Recorded Trails Construction Board is moving along at a fairly good pace as it relates to the second phase, and they're looking for, and just a little bit background, if you recall, several years ago, when we were going through the first phase, there was a $30,000 initially, and then another $30,000, so there was $60,000 from each one of the 3 cities in the joint powers agreement, Rockville, Cold Spring, and Richmond. $29,000 per city was used, and that was for funding that was not qualify for reimbursement from the bonding or legacy grant funds. And so that balance, and it was just, I believe it was 30,000 right on the button, give or take a few dollars of 30,000 that was put back into our coffers. And that's got to be close to 2 years ago. And so now we're looking for the second phase, and there will be a little bit of money up front that needs to be paid again for that that don't qualify for that reimbursement from bonding and legacy grant money. And so we're looking for 20,000 to be advanced from each one of the 3 cities. So that's going to be the council action I'm requesting tonight on behalf of the Recorded Trails. The important thing that we have, and we're going to have a follow-up meeting, the county has a $92,000 commitment that they also have committed to this endeavor. So it's just a matter of, does that kick in after our 60,000 to 320s are completed, or does that in unison with? Is it a 4-way partnership? And so the money needs to come from the 3 cities to go to the county, and they're the fiscal agent to go forward on that. So that's the request that I'd have of this council, to advance the $20,000 to the Recorded Trails Construction Board. And our treasurer, if you want to ask the questions, is none other than Rena Weber. She's also our treasurer for the Recorded Trails Construction Board. If I didn't have it. So that's the request, and if it'd be appropriate, I make a motion to ask that the city council advance the go-ahead for $20,000 to the Recorded Trails Construction Board.
So we have this money set aside already?
Yes, we do.
Yep.
And what's it gonna get used for?
Remember, it was the 84,000 that we got from the S.J. Lewis project for parkland dedication fees, so it hasn't cost anybody here anything.
Yeah.
Oh,
It'll
And we've been very frugal with the money.
Yeah, that was.
It'll be for appraisals, for Jeff's answer, for the mayor's answer, yeah, it'll be for appraisals, and it'll be for some of the engineering, but most of the engineering, when it's a project, then that's paid back, but it's gonna be the appraisal and the legal counsel to get the values. And one of the other things I think it's worthy of us sharing, and that is Roger Schwingheimer, who is the contact person from Burlington Northern Santa Fe, has sent an olive branch to us and saying that maybe you guys want to buy the whole thing, the whole 100-foot right-of-way. From Rockville's perspective, it would be wonderful. Then we don't have to worry about engineering of putting our 2 city sewer lines underneath the thing. So instead of trails by rail, it would be omitting the trails entirely like they did on the Western Phase 1 would be the ultimate. And that's what the Recorded Trails at this last monthly meeting advanced, holding off any more engineering, any more work on trails with rail, with a big fence and engineering to go and wait to see what it would cost for engineering, or not engineering. So there'll be a huge savings for engineering, huge page for construction if we can go that route. So that's kind of, it'll take a little bit, but we have to do this work here, and for us to have 20,000, and as Rena stated, it's not general fund, it comes from Rockville's fortunate, we have funding in the park dedication fee for that purpose.
And the unused portion, when I was on that committee yet, had come back to the city, so we're just kind
Yes.
of putting it back in there.
Yeah, it was funded and it was, and that's the request, and that's the motion I made.
I'll make a motion, or second your motion to refund that, into the Record Trail construction.
Motion been made second to, transfer 20,000, our city's obligation towards this, phase of the project. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion passes.
Jeff, I just have for the finance committee, we had a discussion, the audit committee, or the committee will meet with, on the audit on May 11th at 2:00. We just had a question whether, as they're presenting the audit, they will come to a council meeting, but
The following week.
the following week at the council meeting, but if council members other than Rick and I want to be there, we want to know that now, because we then have to set it up as a special meeting if more than Rick and I are going to go. So we're just asking if people want to attend or wait for the report at the council meeting. Okay, so sounds like just Rick and I, so,
I don't plan on doing it.
No, I don't plan on being there.
Okay.
I won't be there.
okay,
Otherwise, we don't need a committee.
okay, just checking.
Thank you.
All right.
Well, thanks for the invite.
Thanks, Sue.
Okay.
Do you have
One
anything?
thing I have to remind you of is April 29th is the local border reviewer appeals. That meeting starts at 6 o'clock down here. which
6
is
o'clock here?
A Wednesday. Dwayne, you are our certified person at this point.
Okay.
Jeff, yours ran out. Yeah. I think
I
so.
went to that class.
You did,
I did.
yeah, but I think it ran out after,
It was just this last year, though.
yeah. No,
Yeah.
well, okay,
So-
anyway, just reminding you that's when it is, okay?
Okay.
6:30?
6,
6 p.m. here,
yeah.
and the information will be circulated beforehand, like in the past, I believe.
Yeah, who's all
On email.
signed up,
Yep.
yes. Mhm.
Okay, open forum.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I have been gone from here for 3 months, so I had about 10 pages of things to bring up tonight, but I had decided not to bring up anything, but I feel compelled to do so after I listened to this discussion about the water. And I have some questions on this. Many times I've heard talk about a bond payment, and a bond was extended last year. It has never been mentioned. What is this bond for? What does it cover? Can somebody answer that for me?
If, Vince, with the bond that was refinanced last year, we have a balloon payment of $554,000 in February of 2016. Now, this council.
For what?
For the water tower over at Pleasant Lake.
Okay, that was my question.
Yep,
Thank you.
okay.
The next question is, how is this intended to be paid for originally when the bond was taken out? Can somebody answer that?
Houses, development, people. Over there.
Okay. So, and you mean by the WAC funds?
The WAC funds and then I suppose the use, I don't know. Mostly the WAC funds, correct.
So how is it being paid for now?
The actual bond payments are being made, but they're being paid from the water fund,
The water fund?
which includes funds 307, 311, and 601.
So, because of the shortfall created by the lack of WAC funds being collected, who's paying for this now is what my question is.
Right now, the water rates are paying for this, for all,
The downtown city of Rockville is reimbursing the Pleasant Lake system, right?
we have one system.
No. You didn't answer my question, Rena.
I,
The two
Vince,
systems are not connected.
they're not
Okay,
connected, right?
3 years ago, I came up here and I asked for a breakdown on the O&M cost for the Pleasant Lake system and the Rockville system, and I was told that could not be done because it's one system. Well, I never did understand that because if you have a trucking firm and you have 50 trucks, you can tell exactly what every truck costs you. You should be able to tell what two different systems cost. And the other question is, okay, now, I guess you answered that. To pick up the shortfall, the people on the old system in downtown Rockville are picking up the shortfall on this, right?
Everybody who's on the
Everybody is.
water.
No. The Pleasant Lake system is not self-supporting.
Right, but everybody who pays for water is paying for it. And what we just discussed tonight was having the finance committee look at the Archon and the WAC things. So I think we get your concerns, Vince. But
I've heard many times here that a city has to be run like a business. And you people up there that have your own business, if you expanded your business, would you not expect the expansion to support itself? If not, why would you expand your business? And I think, and I'm not blaming anyone here for how this Pleasant Lake system worked out because it was before, I don't know if any, I think Don was on the council then and I think Jeff was, but was there not a developer's agreement made out that if there is a shortfall, there should be a letter of credit, something, from the bank that the city could go back and collect? That's how it's normally done. Dwayne knows very well how that's done, because that's the way it has been done with any development here in Rockville, or any other city that I know of for that part. Why was there not a letter of credit demanded of the developer before this started, so we wouldn't be in this problem today if it would have been done right to begin with? But anyhow, thank you. You answered my question. Yes, the downtown Rockville is supporting the system out at Pleasant Lake. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Diane Willenbring, County Road, 25123, County Road 139. I'm here representing John Clark Co-op. So according to my calculations that I calculated here, our base fees now then for John Clark Co-op will be $720 more for the year. Is that correct?
It
The
sounds.
other question I had, when are the water lines going to be flushed this spring? Do we have a date for that?
We don't have a date yet scheduled. Should be soon. We don't have a date yet. We're working with grinder stations and roads and ditch cleanup at this point. Should be soon.
Can you let us know let me know, I'll get you my phone number. So
Okay,
we don't want to
sure.
turn the sprinkler system on down at John Clark until the lines have been
Sure.
flushed. Otherwise we have a mess out there. Thank you.
$996.48.
It's just the increase.
The increase.
Yeah.
Mayor and Council, I'd like to say it's not the Core City's fault that we should have to pay for subsidizing one area of the city. That money should come out of the general fund. We are one city, and one portion of the city should not be penalized to pay entirely to make up for a mistake that was made in the past. I'm calling for fairness from the council. Please see that it is not fair to take money just from one section of the city for a mistake that was made. It should come out of the general fund. Please consider that.
Anybody else? I do, I mean, I understand your concern. I think we have to get to the bottom of that. I agree with you wholeheartedly. If that downtown water fund is subsidizing the lack of revenue that was needed to make those payments, I guess I was surprised that we put whack charges into that. I would have guessed that there would have been a separate fund set aside to make those payments obligated by that bond. And if we have 500 some thousand sitting in